A very good morning to all the students. So today I'll be discussing in connection with the continuation of types of guideways. So before I proceed with today's session, we need to just revise what we have discussed in the previous session. So actually we have started with the guide and guideways, because it is the guide and guideways which are responsible for giving the proper positioning, proper location of your machine table or the workpiece. So that is the main function of the guide and guideways. So in that we have discussed in length in connection with the friction guideways. So, and what are the different types of friction guideways, like V, flat, dovetail type, cylindrical guideways, etc. in the previous session, and their importance, their significance, and which is the most commonly used type of friction guideways. And along with that, we have also understood about how best we can use the friction guideways with the special coating of material that is called as a PTFE, which we have already discussed in the previous session. So today we know that, and also we have discussed in length in connection with the stick slip phenomenon. So when we speak about the stick slip phenomenon, because this is a very practical experience by all the operators whenever they will start working on friction guideways, that the carriage sometimes will move very fast and or it will stick at a particular place on the lathe bed guideways. So this particular practical difficulty, whatever that we are going to use the carriage, okay, so that can be prevented by using the other types of guideways known as anti-friction guideways, which we are going to discuss in the today's session. So at the end of the today's session, you will be able to understand types of guideways which already discussed, friction guideways discussed, and in the today's session we are going to learn about anti-friction linear motion guideways and other guideways which we are discussing in length. So we know we need to understand, as the name itself implies, they are called as linear motion, because our basic motto is to give the movement of the table, okay, either in X and Y direction. We know very well about that. That means whenever we want to see that the workpiece is to be machined, it is held firmly on a table which is generally made to move in two axes, that is X and Y. Okay, so this motion, whatever is there, no, so that is given with the help of linear motion guideways. Okay, so linear motion guideways, also known as linear motion bearings, so they are just going to act like our regular bearings. So we have understood that whenever I want to rotate any shaft, then I require to hold the shaft in the bearings known as the supports. So in the bearings also you are going to have the inner race, you are going to have an outer race, and you are going to have a cage, and in the cage you will be having all the balls or the rollers which are used for taking the load of the rotating shaft. This is very, very important. So similarly, even in case of a linear motion guideways, they are also sometimes called as linear motion bearings, because we know that what is the basic principle of the guideways? The basic principle of the guideways is to give the motion to the machine table or the workpiece which is held. So when it is going to give this, okay, this can be used either by friction guideways or by anti-friction guideways. So whenever this is carried out, so in between the moving element and the stationary element, we are going to use the balls or the rollers. Okay, so that means there is no direct contact between the moving element and the stationary element. So whatever the movement, that means what? Basically, in order to reduce the friction to almost zero, because the friction coefficient of friction is the main drawback in case of the frictional guideways. So such a problem or such a difficulty can be prevented by the application of linear motion guideways or linear motion bearings. So they have a mechanism to bear the load and to guide their linear motion simultaneously. So there are two capacities are there. The LM guideways are designed in such a way that in between the stationary element and the moving element, either the balls or the rollers are inserted, okay, and the moving element is made to move very smoothly without any difficulty, so that on which the table is also made to move along with it. A linear guideway allows a type of linear motion that utilizes rolling elements, just I have told now, such as balls or rollers. So the main, this one, the whatever the motion is there, so that motion is given with the help of the balls and the rollers, which are provided between the stationary element and the moving element. By using recirculating elements between the rail and block, a linear guideway can achieve high precision linear motion. So this is very, very important. That means the design of the linear LM guideways, if it is done in a proper way, so whatever the linear motion is there, so that can be given very perfectly in case of a CNC machines, which is the need as far as the accuracy of the production is concerned. So now these are used on CNC machine tools. So what is the purpose of using anti-friction LM? What are the main purposes? So reduce the amount of wear. This is very, very important, because whatever the amount of wear is there, which we are going to experience in case of a friction guideways, can be prevented by using the linear motion anti-friction guideways. Improve the smoothness of the movement, because there is no direct contact between the stationary and the moving element. The rollers are going to take the complete load coming. Okay, so that is why there is a very smooth movement is there. Improve the smoothness of the movement, reduce friction. That is a very common thing, because there is no direct contact, means there is no question of any friction, and thereby no question of excessive amount of heat being generated while the movements are going to given for the work table, okay, or the machine table. Reduce the heat generation. Of course, both are related there. When the friction is reduced, definitely the heat is also getting reduced there. Anti-friction guideways are used to overcome relatively high coefficient of friction in metal to metal contacts, and the resulting limitation addressed in the above list. So whatever the limitations are there, that means what are drawbacks are there. Okay, so all the drawbacks like friction, heat, wear, all these things can be prevented, because, and also the high coefficient of friction can be reduced to zero by using the rolling elements, which are known as balls or rollers between the stationary element and the moving element. So they use rolling elements in between the moving and stationary elements of the machine. This is very, very important. We are going to use, they are called as rolling elements. It is a very common word known as a rolling. That means along with the moving table, okay, the movement of the rollers will also take place in a predefined path which is provided below the table itself. So now let us understand, just related to the previous this one only, presentation slide only, what are the necessity or advantages of using the anti-friction linear motion guideways. So all these things you already discussed now, just we are have a revision, and very, very important to be noticed here, to reduce the frictional resistance between the moving elements. So whenever the movement is going to take place between the two parts, then we require to reduce the resistance to friction. Frictional resistance, if it is reduced, then it is possible to reduce the heat, and also there is no much amount of any lubrication required. So many factors can be prevented there. To improve the smoothness of the movement, whatever the smoothness of the movement is, it is possible to achieve very correctly compared to friction guideways. To reduce the heat generation, there is no heat generation because there is no friction, because there is no direct contact between the two parts. No stick slip friction guideways. So like a friction guideways, there is no question of stick slip phenomenon. So this can be reduced to zero. To reduce the amount of wear, whatever the amount of wear. So one question is coming up here, because the entire load is taken by the rollers or the balls, which are being provided in a predefined path, okay, between the stationary element and the moving element. So the wearing, whatever the wearing is there, that is concerned with the balls and rollers due to continuous movement of these elements. So that way, that means there is the necessity of changing the set of guide and guideways to provide a high load carrying capacity. Even it can have a high load carrying capacity is possible by using the LM guideways to achieve high traverse speed. This is one of the basic advantage or necessity of using LM guideways. So whatever the traverse speed means, what? The speed at which okay, or the linear movement, whatever is there, at which the moving element is made to move is very quick and without any stick slip. That is why the traverse speed can be achievable is more. So thereby it is possible to carry out the what we can say machining operations at ease without any much difficulty, easily assembled. So this is also one of the major advantage of using the LM guideways. So whenever we want to go for to place an order for the LM guideways, so they are available in the as mating components. Mating components means what? There is no slideway separate and guide separate. Both are available as a assembled. Okay, that is what we are going to discuss in subsequent presentations. Okay, whenever we want to go for the replacement, then we have to replace both the moving as well as the stationary element. Okay, commercially available in ready to fit condition. This is one of the major advantages. So they are commercially available by the manufacturers, which can be replaced whenever we are going to face the difficulty in connection with the usage of these guideways. So now we shall have an understanding about the linear bearing with balls. So these are considered as the parts or the different types of LM guideways we are discussing now. So these are called as the linear bearing with balls because a linear ball bush uses recirculating balls within a bush type of bearing. So here you are going to see a cage, okay, as you are going to see very clearly the cage here, okay, and the cage is used to guide properly the balls within the predefined path, so that whatever the rotation of the shaft is there, that in turn provides actually the linear motion to the moving element, to this element. This is very, very important. So a linear ball bush uses recirculating balls within a bush type of bearing. These are designed to run along the precision ground shafts and other frictionless movement or varying strokes of length with high linear precision. So that means it is possible to achieve more movement of the work table as well as with a high accuracy of the positioning, because whenever we are going to carry out any machining operation, so especially in case of a CNC machines, there is a continuous change of the position of the cutting tool as well as the workpiece being held. So when operations are being carried out, machining operations are being carried out, especially on CNC machines, there is a need that the positioning of this cutting tool as well as the workpiece is correctly controlled as per the programming instructions. So in such cases, we require to have a high linear precision, means linear movement we expect from the LM guideways. Okay, so now next one coming up is, as you are going to see, the linear bearing with balls, which I have explained to you how it works. So whatever you are going to see, it is a cut section, the suppose. So whatever you are going to see here in the previous slide, if it is cut like this, sorry, I'll just show you. Suppose if it is cut like this and seen in this direction, okay, so that is what is available, this one. Whatever you are going to see here in this portion is nothing but the cross section of this. This is the cross section, okay. That is what we are going to see in the previous slide. Observe for a few seconds how it works. So we are going to see the movement of the ball, which is made to move in a predefined path in a correct way, and thereby it is making the element to move properly. So this is a stationary element. As you are going to see clearly, this is a stationary element, and this is the moving element, which is going to give a particular motion, linear precision motion for the mounting, which is there provided on this particular type of linear bearing with the ball. Sometimes you can also have the rollers which are being provided, okay. So that such types of anti-friction LM guideways are used on automatic machines or automatic CNC machines, okay. So let us start the same explanation what I have done here. Just suppose if at all I am going to replace here the balls with the help of a rollers, how it functions, that we are discussing here now. Just observe carefully. Now you are going to have the cylindrical rollers. These are called as the rollers, and this is the moving element and this is the stationary element. So what is going to happen here, as the cylindrical rollers are made to move like this, there is a movement of the moving element. That is what we are discussing here. The recirculating linear roller bearings are used for movement along a flat plane. The basic requirement is like this. In place of balls, we are going to use the rollers. That's all. Are used for the movement along a flat plane, means along the linear direction. Their main characteristic feature is that there is a continuous roller circulation which allows unlimited linear movement. This is one of the plus points here which we are going to see. So there is a continuous movement. There is no cut of the movement here. Just we have shown here like this. So again you can have one more element like this, similar to this, and again you can proceed with the motion. Okay, so their main characteristic feature is that there is continuous roller circulation which allows unlimited linear movement. It is possible to go for a larger length of the moving element. It consists of hardened and precision ground supporting elements. So what it consists of? It consists of hardened and precision ground supporting elements and a number of cylindrical rollers. So these are called as cylindrical rollers. So these are called as cylindrical rollers, which are provided in a perfectly defined cages, ground supporting elements and a number of cylindrical rollers, as in the case of roller bearings. How it is there in the case of roller bearing, same one, but these are called as, these are going to provide the linear motion. In a regular roller bearing, it is going to provide for the rotation of the shafts. So here the rollers can also be used to give a linear motion. That is what he wanted to tell. As in the case of roller bearings, the rollers are guided between the shoulders of the supporting elements with very close tolerances. That means whatever the movement is there, so that can be considered with a highest accuracy as far as the positioning is concerned. Okay. The grinding element prevents the rollers from falling out and sliding against each other. So whatever the element that is going to be provided as a cage, it will not allow, okay, the rollers to come out of that particular predefined path. That is what he is telling here. Also, the guiding element assists in smooth return of the rollers to the loading zone. So that means what we have discussed here, just I will repeat that. Observe this carefully. Here you are going to see the balls. In place of a balls, even you can have a provision of the rollers. There is no much difference. Here it is, I am going to show you how the movement of the ball is going to take place within a predefined path. The same is applicable if it is the ball is replaced by the rollers. The same functioning is there, no much difference. That you need to understand here clearly. The rollers are in contact. Okay, also the guiding element assists in smooth return of the rollers to the loading zone. The rollers are in contact with the guideway machined on the bed of the machine. So that is the main importance of these, using these rollers. So what arrangement is possible? What additional advantages or additional benefits are there? Let us see. Definitely compared to the ball linear bearing with balls, there is a point contact, but whereas in case of linear bearing with rollers, there is a line contact. Definitely it is having a better capacity of loading. So this arrangement provides smooth and easy movement, but the machine bed has to be machined to an accurate form. So whatever the machine bed formation is there, it has to be machined correctly. Also the machine bed surfaces coming in contact with the rollers have to be hardened. So whatever the bed surfaces which are going to come in contact, means where they are being kept, even that has to be hardened so that the wearing rate can be reduced. The main purpose of giving the hardening property to these elements is to reduce the amount of wear. These bearings can be mounted horizontally for load carrying applications such as machine tool table. Basically these are used for the providing the movement for the work table, or they can be mounted vertically to provide the support. Sometimes they can be mounted vertically also. Guidance and motion for vertical elements of the machine tool. So general application is, it is basically used for the purpose of giving the linear motions like this, which you are going to see clearly on the screen. That is very, very important. Now we need to understand here again in detail, okay, anti-friction LM guideways. What is the structure? You can have again what we have discussed. So you are going to see the rolling elements here. So these are called as the rolling elements. As you are going to see, the rolling elements are whatever the direction, also you are going to see very clearly how the movement is going to take place there, okay, and how the carriage is also made to move. So friction force between the rolling elements and the carriage is there, okay, and that is very small one. So now because the entire load is coming directly on the rolling elements only, and here you are going to see the bearing surfaces, and here you are also going to see the friction force between the rolling elements and the rail, and this is how the carriage is made to move as you are going to, and this it is possible due to the movement of these rolling elements, either the balls or rollers, in case of a anti-friction linear motion guideways. So this is how the structure of the application of the LM guideways is there, which can be used for moving the carriage, in turn for giving the movement to the work table. That you need to understand here. Now the next important concept, now till now whatever, there are two important types which we already discussed. One is the linear bearings with the balls, second one is linear bearings with the rollers. So depending upon the amount of load, type of a machine, we have to decide what type of LM guideways we require to use on CNC machines. So along with that, so there is one more important application of these LM guideways design is there, that is called as hydrostatic and aerostatic guideways. So as the name itself implies, hydrostatic guideways is nothing but, okay, using the application of oil pressure. That means we are going to consider the movement of the oil within the guideways for giving the movement to the moving surface of the guideway. So let us understand how this is going to be considered now. The surface of the slide is separated from the guideway by a very thin film of fluid supplied at pressures as high as 300 bar. So that is the amount of pressure at which the oil is being supplied. See, whatever you are going to see now, let us understand this is a cross-sectional view again. So this is called as the moving element, okay, and the load is coming because above this there is a mounting of the work table and also the mounting of the workpiece. So that is why the load is coming directly on this moving element. So now you see the slots or the gap that is being provided, and see also the movement of how the oil is being pressurized in between this gap. Whatever the gap is there, okay, so that gap is filled with the help of a pressurized oil at as high as 300 bar in between the stationary element. This is the stationary element and this is the moving element. So frictional wear and stick slip are entirely eliminated. So there is no question of any friction here. The reason is very simple, as you are going to see there, okay, because whatever the effect, the contact is there, that contact is purely due to the oil film that is being formed in between these two surfaces. So whatever the oil film, thickness of the oil film itself is considered as it can be used for purpose of preventing the frictional generation, and there is no question of any stick slip phenomenon as we have seen in your friction guideways. A high degree of dynamic stiffness and damping is obtained with these guideways. That means whatever the ability is there, stiffness, okay, dynamic stiffness means the dynamic load capacity carrying is more in case of hydrostatic guideways, and damping means vibration absorption, because it is going to give like a cushioning effect, okay, because there is no metal to metal contact. This one idea here, their application is limited due to high cost and difficulty in assembly. So this is one of the major drawbacks you can consider. Though it is possible to prevent the stick slip phenomenon and avoid friction, avoid heat generation, okay, as there is no direct contact, and whatever the amount of oil that is pumped between the stationary element and the moving element, the load is coming directly on that fluid only. Okay, so that is why the friction is almost zero, no stick slip is there, but only drawbacks is the maintenance becomes very, very difficult. So that is the main, what we can say as the difficulty in case of a hydrostatic guideways. So that is why their application is limited due to high cost and difficulty in assembling. The assembling is also a slightly complicated one. Okay, now similar to this hydrostatic guideways, we need to understand, suppose if we replace the oil by air, so how it is going to work. There is absolutely no difference in the sketch. So whatever the sketch you are going to see in hydrostatic guideways, okay, the same sketch is also considered for the aerostatic. The word is called as aerostatic because we are going to use air as the medium for providing the motion to the moving element of the guideways. So that is why it is called as a aerostatic guideways. The working principle remains same. In place of oil, we are going to have a replacement of the air pressure here. That is what we are going to understand here. The slide is raised on a cushion. The slide is raised on a cushion. This is called as a slide which is raised, which is made to move, okay, on a cushion of compressed air, which entirely separates the slide and the guideway surfaces. So what we are going to do with the help of these inlets, which you are going to see very clearly here, we are going to provide the desired amount of air pressure in this gap, and which can give a cushioning effect and which lifts the slide so that it will start moving and the guideway surfaces. The major limitation is the lower stiffness. So compared to here, compared to the hydrostatic guideways, this is having a lower stiffness, which limits their application to positioning only. So this particular guideways is not that commonly used compared to the hydrostatic LM guideways and the friction guideways. So here it is limited to coordinate measuring machine. You might observe, what is a coordinate measuring machine? It is a machine which measures the different coordinate values of a given workpiece. I want to measure the dimensions automatically. So in such cases, okay, that for positioning purpose, so such guideways can be used, known as a aerostatic guideways. So now in the today's topic of discussion, we have discussed in length in connection with the anti-friction LM guideways which are having the advantages of preventing mainly the stick slip phenomenon, mainly the friction. So these are the two drawbacks which are found in the friction guideways, which can be prevented by using either the balls or the rollers in between the moving element and the stationary element. And along with that, we have also discussed about the hydrostatic guideways, where we can use the oil pressure for the purpose of giving movement to the moving part of the guideways, and also the aerostatic guideways. So where we are going to adopt, in place of a oil, we can take the property of air pressure for giving the movement to the slide, but these machines are having limited applications. Aerostatic guideways are having limited applications for in case, that means it is having basic application in case of a coordinate measuring machine as a major application, because there it can be used only for the positioning purpose, not for the continuous movement purpose, as they are having lower capacity of stiffness. So that is why we need to understand these applications. So that completes the guideways concept. Okay, we have already started with machine structure, we have finished. Now we have finished the guideways as the second important part of a CNC machine tool. Now we need to understand what are the expected questions in the examinations. So recall the necessity of anti-friction LM guideways used in the CNC machine tools. So we need to understand here what is the purpose, necessity okay, of using the LM guideways compared to what we can say friction guideways. So that is already there in the slide, which you can see and you can note down. Explain with sketch any one type of anti-friction LM guideways. They can ask in the examinations either linear bearings with balls, linear bearings with rollers, with the sketch and working. So along with this, I am also going to attach, okay, whatever the today's notes requirement is there, which you need to study from the examination point of view. So write all the answers of all these questions, whatever the answers that are being given in a separate notebook, and keep ready with you, okay, and also study regularly. That is very, very important. Okay, with this I'm also going to attach one of the important videos along with this, so that you can view it for better understanding of the guide and guideways. Okay.
And today we are going to discuss a very important topic in regard to the construction of machine. And in the construction of CNC machine, the major thing which is every time creates a problem is the slide and slideways. So today's important topic is slideways and their types, because every movement, like if I would say the your CNC milling machine, the job is in motion, the tool is moving just up and down, but job is moving on XY direction, correct? So the movement of your job or your tool should be very smooth, correct? So whatever is first thing, the movement should be smooth. Second is, whichever input is given, like if it is moving, if it is asked to move 5 mm, then it should move only 5 mm, correct? So it is purely depending upon your slide and slideways, correct? So there are different type of slideways that we are using in the machine, correct? So I would just say that what are the major things that a good slideway must possess. What are the things? You might have seen this here. Check out it. So this is a slideways which I made, and this is a slide which can move on the slide, on the slideway, sorry, correct? So the slide which is moving on the slide, what are the good things which must be possessed by the slideways, correct? So if I would start with, it should be having a high travel of accuracy. Yes, the accuracy must be, as I told you, if I ask to do 5 mm, it should move 5 mm only. It should having a good surface finish, so that the motion would be without any resistance, correct? And the less friction would be there, and minimum difference in static and dynamic friction of coefficient. What is the meaning of static and dynamic friction coefficient? Means whenever it moves or stops, it should not be a jerky movement, correct? Because everybody knows that the dynamic friction is always less than the static friction, correct? So when the things in a static position, the friction would be higher, and when the slide wheel in a motion, the friction would be less. So this difference would create a jerky motion, correct? So what we want, it should be having a dynamic and static friction very close to each other. High rigidity and rugged construction. Why? Because it has to bear maximum loads and forces. There should be the withstand capacity should be high. Good damping properties means any kind of vibration it can absorb. Yeah, so these are the good things, which good properties that a slideway must possess, correct? Then what are the types? So if I would say, there are majority of 3 types, if I would say. Then the fourth one is, like the first is hydrostatic type slideways, then the anti-friction type slideways, then recirculating ball screw and nut assembly, and the last one is processes for the slideways. Means if you are having a slideway, then what we can apply onto them so that their resistance would be decreased, or maybe it should be good, it should become good. Clear? So I would start with the very first type of the slideway, which is the hydrostatic slideway. Then a hydrostatic slideway means when a thin layer of oil or maybe your air is provided between the slide and slideways. See, these are the slideways are already made in the slide, correct, or the bed, fine. So on the bed, the continuous oil pressure is maintained inside these voids, correct. When a continuous oil pressure is made, then there is a thin layer of oil between the slide and a slideways is maintained. So when there is a thin layer of oil is maintained, there will be less friction, and the movement of the slide in the given direction would be easier, and there will be less movement. And secondly, it should be giving you high accuracy, because the friction would be less, so you require less force to move, Correct. So this is the oil lubricated. When in the voids, you can see there's a pressurized oil is coming from this side. The pressurized oil from these veins. Correct. So it is provided in between the slide and slide ways, so that there's no stick, or maybe due to the load, it should not stick to each other. Fine. Or it should not be create more friction between the two moving elements. That's why this oil lubricated. Similarly, we do have the air lubricated. So instead of using the oil, which is quite costly and maybe require high money, it is not economical. That's why we are using the air lubricated. So this is the air lubricated slide ways. What is happening inside? Same way as the oil lubricateds are there. In the oil lubrication, we pressurize through a pump. In the air lubricated, in which we are pressurizing the air through a compressor and provided between the slide and slide ways. So when it is provided between, so there is a gap is maintained, a thin gap is maintained between the slide and slide ways. Correct. So whenever it is required, we can move into any direction. Clear? So that is called air lubricated slide ways. So it's the first type. Then the second type is anti-friction guideways. Anti-friction guideways is further of two types: ball bearing and roller bearing. So in the ball bearing, you might have seen this kind of arrangement in most of the things when the balls are placed between the two meeting part. Correct. If I would say this lower one is your slide ways and upper one is your slide. So in between we provided what? A ball. Correct. A ball is provided. So through the ball, the slide can move it in the given direction. Clear? So it is again, it's a point contact, but the condition is the ball cannot bear the maximum load, the heavier load. That's why we use it less. So the simpler application of the ball bearing, which you have already seen in your cycles, in the handle of your cycle, it is already there. Correct? The ball bearing. Yes, but in the machines we do use it, but for a softer work, so means the lighter works, because they cannot bear the heavier loads. That's why we cannot use them for the heavier loads. Correct, the ball bearing. But the thing is, the number of ball bearings are provided in between these two, so the friction would be less, and they are totally hardened balls, chrome plated, so that it can bear the load, but not the heavier one. See in this image. So these balls are provided. Can you see these balls? Correct. So these balls, this is a slide and this is a slide guideways. These are the guideways are provided. In the guideways, the balls are already filled. The balls are filled, and when you move the guideways in XY direction or any direction, correct, in X-axis or Y-axis, these balls will provide them a smoother motion. Correct. Yeah, there's a one benefit of these ball bearings, that it does not have a stick and slip motion. In case of oil or air, and sometimes the oil gets stick to the surface of the slide and slide ways, so there is a jerky movement is provided. Correct. So but in case of ball bearing, there is no problem like that. Correct. Now the next one is roller bearing guideways. So you might have seen, instead of using the balls, we are using the rollers. Rollers of kind, this one. Correct. These are the guideways are provided in here. So in between the guideways, the roller bearings are provided. On these roller bearings, the slide can move. What is the benefit of these roller bearings? Because although there is a line contact, the contact is greater than the ball bearings, but its load bearing capacity is much more than that the ball bearings. Correct. That's why we are using the roller bearing. Correct. So in heavier works, we do use the roller bearing. So this is your guideways. If you can see here, this is your guideways and these are your bearings. Correct. And these bearings are taking all of the load. Yes, and it can roll along the surface, along the guideways very easily. Correct. Then the next one is recirculating ball, screw and nut assembly. This is a quite newer technology which is used mostly in the machines which we are now producing. It is beneficial from any of like the hydrostatic or your anti-friction. It is actually a ball, screw and nut assembly. See here, in this case you can see there is a shaft, there is a supplying shaft in which the balls are already provided. Correct. And in which you can easily see your balls are moving, and this recirculating ball, nut, screw and assembly moved up and down in this case. Correct. So as you can see in the video, the recirculating balls are moving from one end to the another end with a very simple application. As the slide wheel moves up and down, you can easily move your work table to any direction. It is a kind of a lead screw, but it is not a lead screw. But in the lead screw, we are providing the bolts. We are providing the bolts, and these bolts are moving along the screw, along the lead screw. Wherever direction it is going, the ball bearings will follow it. Correct. That's why its name became the recirculating ball screw and nut assembly. Correct. As you can see in the video. Correct. Now the next is processes for slideways. Yeah, this is again an important topic in the processes for the slideways. You can see there are two types of the wear resistant slideways and slideways material. Correct. In the wear resistant slideways is the slideways are already made. You can see in this image the slideways are already made, but in between we provide a material which is very resistant to the wear. Correct. Or maybe we are providing a layer of the resistant material in it. Correct. We kept a material over here, but if we are providing like this one, we are providing a layer of the material, of a different material like chrome plating. The chrome plating is the hardest material. Your base material would be different, but plating is of chrome, so that the hardness is there, so it can bear the loads even. Fine. Then the slideways material. So deciding what type of forces that you can generate while cutting. So depending upon that, your slideways material should be selected. Okay. Whenever it is selected, so you can use it. Fine. So this is all about